Can a heart forged in darkness ever truly learn to love? Can a king of shadows be saved by the light of a woman he was meant to own? They say in our world, love is a liability, a bullet aimed at your own chest. But what if it's the only thing worth dying for? Serafina was a whisper of a promise, a living treaty sent to my gilded cage to quell a war between my family, the Volkovs, and hers, the Falcons. She walked into my marble hall, a vision in defiant white, her chin held high even as her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, betrayed a flicker of fear. I was Alessandro Volkov. Il Lupo. The wolf. Men who owed me millions trembled at the sound of my name. And this girl, this fragile peace offering, was now my property. I saw the fire banked behind her fear, the spirit she tried so hard to conceal. You belong to me now, Passerato, I murmured, my voice a low growl that echoed in the cavernous room. Her hands, balled into fists at her side, were the only sign of her rebellion. I belong to no one, she shot back, her voice clear and steady, a single perfect note of defiance in a symphony of submission. A smirk touched my lips. This would be far more interesting than I'd anticipated. The gilded cage had just found its songbird, and I was a patient man. I would teach her the words to my song, one way or another. My world was one of calculated violence and silent obedience. Men followed my orders without question, their loyalty bought with fear and coin. But Serafina was different. She moved through my cold, opulent home like a ghost of warmth, leaving traces of life in her wake. I found her one evening in the infirmary, stitching up the arm of a young guard, Leo, who had taken a knife meant for me. Her touch was gentle, her voice a soothing balm as she chastised him for his recklessness. She wasn't afraid of the blood. She was angered by the waste of it. I watched from the shadows, a strange, unfamiliar ache spreading through my chest. Later, I cornered her in the library, the scent of old leather and her jasmine perfume a heady mix. You have a gentle heart for a falcon, I observed, my voice rougher than I intended. She didn't flinch. She simply met my gaze, her stormy eyes searching mine. And you have a soul for a Volkov. I see it, even when you try to hide it behind the monster. Her words were a physical blow, stripping away layers of armor I hadn't known were there. This woman, this captive, saw not the wolf but the man. And that, I realized with a jolt of pure terror, was the most dangerous thing of all. She was not a possession. She was a mirror, and I was not prepared for the reflection. The nights became our sanctuary. Isabella, my family's housekeeper for 50 years and the only person whose loyalty I never questioned, saw the shift in me. She saw the way my eyes followed Serafina, the softening of my voice when I spoke her name. The old woman, with a wisdom that transcended our brutal world, began leaving the door to the west garden unlocked. It was there, under the pale glow of the moon and surrounded by the scent of my mother's white roses, that we truly met. Away from the prying eyes and the weight of my crown, I was just Alessandro. She was just Serafina. I told her of the betrayal that had scarred my soul, the loss that had forged me into Il Lupo. She, in turn, spoke of her dreams of a simple life, a world away from the blood and honor that had chained her. One night I brushed a stray curl from her face, my callous fingers gentle against her soft skin. These roses, I confessed, my voice a whisper. They are the only part of my mother I have left, the only beautiful thing that has ever survived in my world. She placed her hand over mine, her warmth seeping into me. Perhaps new things can learn to grow here, she murmured. From the shadows of the cypress trees my cousin Marco watched, his face a mask of venomous envy. He saw not a blossoming love, but a fatal weakness, a crack in my empire he could exploit. The illusion of peace shattered like glass. A shipment of arms, a critical component of my truce with the Falcons, was ambushed. My men were slaughtered. The evidence was damning, meticulously planted to point directly at Serafina's family. Betrayal, hot and bitter, coiled in my gut. The wolf was unleashed. I found her in the garden, tending to the roses, a picture of impossible innocence. The fury that coursed through me was a physical force, cold and sharp. Was it all a lie? I snarled, grabbing her arm. The petals of a white rose she held were crushed in my grip. Were you sent here to be my ruin? Was every soft word, every gentle touch, just a part of your family's pathetic little trap? Fear flashed in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a blaze of righteous anger. She ripped her arm from my grasp. You think so little of me? You think I am capable of such deceit? She cried, her voice breaking with hurt. You see treachery everywhere because it lives inside your own heart, Alessandro. You trust no one, so you are destined to be alone. Her words struck home. A truth more painful than any knife. I saw the genuine anguish on her face, the raw wound of my accusation. For the first time in my life, the evidence of my eyes and the instincts of a predator were at war with the desperate beating of my own heart. I wanted to believe her. Gods, I needed to. The storm that had been brewing outside finally broke, lashing the villa with wind and rain, a perfect reflection of the tempest inside me. Our argument raged, moving from the garden to my chambers, voices rising with the thunder. Accusations and denials flew like shrapnel until we were both raw, exposed, and exhausted. I have built my entire life on one rule. Trust no one. I roared, pacing the room like a caged animal. And you ask me to throw that away for a feeling? Serafina stood her ground, tears streaming down her face but her spine ramrod straight. I am not asking you to throw anything away. I am asking you to see me, the woman who has looked at the monster and has not run away. The truth of her words silenced me. She hadn't flinched from my darkness. She had sought the light within it. I crossed the room in 2 strides, my hands coming up to cup her face, my thumbs wiping away her tears. The anger was gone, replaced by a desperate, aching need. If you are poison, mia cara, I whispered against her lips, the words a vow, an oath, a surrender. Then I will drink you down to the last drop. The kiss was not gentle. It was a collision, a claiming, a sealing of a pact made in the heart of the storm. In that moment I made my choice. I would believe her. And if I was wrong, if she was my ruin, then I would let her burn my kingdom to the ground. Our love became a secret garden in a world of concrete and steel. Within the walls of the villa, a fragile peace bloomed. My demeanor with my men remained unchanged. I was still Il Lupo, ruthless and demanding, but with Serafina I was simply Alessandro. The harsh lines of my face would soften. The permanent tension in my shoulders would ease. Then came the miracle, whispered to me one night as we lay tangled in the sheets, the moon painting silver stripes across her skin. She was pregnant. An heir. A Volcavere. The news struck me with the force of a physical blow. A terrifying, exhilarating shock. My first instinct was a primal wave of protectiveness so fierce it stole my breath. This child, our child, was a symbol of a future I had never dared to imagine. It was also a death sentence if our enemies discovered it. The stakes of our dangerous game had just been raised to an impossible height. My obsession with her safety became absolute. Guards were doubled. Her food was tasted. No one entered her presence without my explicit permission. But as my paranoia grew, so did Marco's desperation. He saw the new, soft light in my eyes when I looked at Serafina. He saw the way my hand instinctively went to her still flat stomach. He knew. An heir would cement my legacy forever, pushing him permanently into the shadows. His plotting grew darker, more frantic. The life blooming within Serafina was not just a symbol of our love. It had become the target in a war for my throne. The stress of our precarious situation took its toll. Serafina's pregnancy was fraught with complications, her health fragile. Every day was a battle to keep her safe and calm, a feat nearly impossible in a world built on violence. Marco chose his moment with the precision of a master assassin. He didn't attack me. He attacked my foundation. Using a rival family as a proxy, he staged a brazen assault on the villa itself. It was a diversion, a masterstroke of chaos designed to draw me away. Gunfire erupted, alarms blared, and my world devolved into a symphony of destruction. My men moved to repel the invaders, and my first, all-consuming thought was of Serafina. I fought my way through the smoke-filled corridors, a demon of vengeance, my only goal to reach her side. But Marco had anticipated this. A secondary explosion rocked the east wing, where her chambers were. The shockwave sent her falling. I heard her scream, a sound that ripped through the cacophony of battle and tore my soul in two. When I finally reached her, crashing through the splintered door, she was on the floor, her face pale with pain and terror. Blood stained the silk of her gown. She was in labor. Far, far too early. The trap had been sprung, and we had walked right into it. Marco had turned our sanctuary into a war zone, and our unborn child was caught in the crossfire. The world narrowed to the confines of that room, the sounds of the battle outside fading to a dull roar. My personal physician, Dr. Alessi, a man who had served my family for 30 years, was rushed in. His face was a grim mask. Everything was a blur of frantic activity, whispered medical terms, and Serafina's cries of pain. I held her hand, my knuckles white, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Hours later, in the suffocating silence that followed the storm of birth, a tiny, impossibly fragile baby boy was born. He was perfect but utterly still. He did not cry. He did not breathe. Dr. Alessi worked on him for what felt like an eternity before finally straightening up. His shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a hollow pity that I would never forget. "I'm sorry, Alessandro," he said, his voice heavy. "He's gone. He was too small too early." The words didn't register at first. They were just sounds, meaningless and foreign. Then they landed, a killing blow to the heart. A wave of cold so profound it burned washed over me. I looked at Serafina, her face a canvas of exhaustion and disbelief, a silent scream frozen on her lips. My son, my heir, the symbol of my redemption, gone. The hope that had taken root in my blackened soul was ripped out, leaving a gaping, bleeding wound. Marco had won. He hadn't just attacked my home. He had extinguished my future. The wolf returned, more savage and broken than ever before. A funereal quiet descended upon the villa, thick and suffocating. My men walked on eggshells, their faces grim. I retreated into a world of whiskey and silent rage. The monster Serafina had seen past, now fully consuming me. But Isabella, her face etched with the wisdom of generations, refused to surrender to the void. While Dr. Alessi wrote out a death certificate and Marco offered his false condolences, she approached the small, silk-lined bassinet. She looked at the tiny, still form of my son, a child the world had already declared dead. "No," she whispered, a word of absolute defiance against fate itself. Ignoring the doctor's professional dismissal, she gently lifted the baby, her movements filled with a desperate, ancient faith. She unwrapped the clinical hospital blankets and swaddled him tightly in a cashmere shawl that had belonged to my mother. She carried him to Serafina's bed, placing the cool, silent bundle against his mother's bare chest, skin to skin. She began to hum, a low, ancient lullaby from the old country, a song of mountain springs and stubborn life. She leaned close, her own warm breath ghosting over the baby's face, whispering pleas to saints long forgotten. And then the impossible. Flicker. A tiny shuddering gasp. A weak, reedy whimper that cut through the silence like a shard of divine light. At that exact moment, in the chaos of the aftermath, a dying guard, Leo, clutched my arm. His last words a fevered confession about Marco and a paid-off doctor. Grief turned to white-hot fury. The wolf's roar of vengeance shook the very foundations of the villa. The final act was set in the grand hall, beneath the portraits of my ancestors. I stood before my assembled capos and soldiers, the men who had sworn their lives to me. In my arms, wrapped in my mother's shawl, was my son, his tiny chest rising and falling in a steady, miraculous rhythm. Serafina stood beside me, weak but resolute, her hand on my arm, a queen reclaiming her throne. Marco was dragged in, flanked by my most loyal men. The look on his face when he saw the living, breathing child was a portrait of pure shock and terror. His victory had been stolen from him by the faith of an old woman and the stubborn heart of a premature baby. "You sought to break me," I began, my voice dangerously calm, resonating with cold power. "You sought to extinguish my line. You used my heart as a weapon against me." I laid out his treachery detail by damning detail. The sabotage shipment, the staged attack, the bought doctor who now knelt weeping at my feet. "You broke the code. You betrayed your own blood. There was no trial. In our world, justice is swift." Marco met his end not with a bang, but with the chilling silence of Omerta. As he was taken away, I turned back to my men. I held up my son. "This is Antonio Volkov," I declared. "Your future Don. A symbol not of weakness, but of a strength you have never known. A new era begins today. An era of true loyalty forged not in fear, but in love and blood." Later, in the quiet of the nursery, I placed a single perfect white rose in my son's bassinet. He was my hope. She was my salvation. I was no longer just a king of shadows. I was a husband and a father, and I would burn the world to keep my family safe. So I ask you, can a mafia boss's heart survive true love? It seems mine cannot survive without it. What epic love stories have changed your world? Share them below, and don't forget to share our story if you believe that even in the darkest night, love can be the dawn.